Hello again. I need to think of a much snappier way to start these videos, some beginning catchphrase or something, I don't know. Anyway, so, last time we looked at the top 10 worst films of 2017, so before we jump to the 10 best, I like to kind of look at those ones that are kind of in the middle. You know, meh films, I think, are important because if you look at what most of us watch, you know, either, you know, on your streaming or if you're like me and your DVDs, you know, I would wager that I'd say 80 to 90% of what's there are meh films. Films that, you know, aren't terribly great or they're not the worst thing ever. You know, they're just kind of in the middle. So I think we need to acknowledge that. It's not all films go into those two categories, the worst and the best. Some of them, you know, so these are the films that weren't good enough, pardon me, weren't good enough to make the top 10, but weren't bad enough to go into the bottom 10. So let's talk about them. The top 10 meh films of 2017. Number 10. Dunkirk. I really admire Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker, especially in his tendency to want to use practical effects more than CGI. And as such, I think Dunkirk was one of the most impressive films I've seen in a long time, just in terms of its scope, you know, the number of extras and everything that he used. I also think it was one of the most intense films. I talk in one of my theater classes about, you know, the use of music and how that opening scene, it's like there's no, it's almost like a silent picture. There's no dialogue and no music, and it really makes the whole thing just feel really, really intense. So I love the way he creates a mood. I love the way this film looks. I love the way this film feels. A lot of people had trouble with kind of the jumping back and forth in time. And yeah, that got a little convoluted, but I didn't mind it. I was pretty much able to keep track of everything. Maybe because I was aware he was going to do that on the way in. But what keeps this one out of the top for me is that Christopher Nolan's tendency is to, you know, really focus on the visual aspect of storytelling, whereas the character element is usually undercut. There's not a lot of character interaction. You don't know any of these people really well. You don't get to know who they are. I think that's mainly because he wants them to seem like everyman. You know, we can visualize ourselves in there. But I think the end result is it's a film that's harder to connect with on an emotional level. You connect with it on a psychological level, but it doesn't quite get there for me. Number 9. Kingsman, The Golden Circle. So I came late to the Kingsman party. I didn't watch the first one until I heard the second one was coming out, and I thought, oh, that'd be a good one for a review. And I watched the first one, and I really liked it. Really liked it. Really enjoyed everything about it. And I really enjoyed pretty much everything about this one. The action is really creative. The characters are fun. It's a wonderful cross between, you know, a really absurd James Bond movie and a live-action comic book. The problem with this one, and again, what keeps it out of that top 10, is that I feel like the focus was kind of all over the place. You almost felt like they had two movies they were smashing together. You know, they wanted to tell the Kingsman's sequel, but they also wanted to do a Statesman movie, which I don't know why he just couldn't do two movies. You know, the whole, you know, this whole subplot with Halle Berry wanting to be an agent, and they don't let her be an agent. Then in the end, she gets to be an agent. It's like, I didn't care about any of that. Why was Channing Tatum even in this movie? His character had no influence or impact on anything, except maybe to set him up as another character if they ever do a third one, which, you know, that doesn't go for me. Still, the visuals are fantastic, and our main characters are just as enjoyable as they were last time. Number 8. Going in Style. I said this in the worst film list, but there's going to be themes running through these three lists, and I didn't mean there'd be heist movies are going to be a big thing, and I enjoyed this little picture. There wasn't anything really amazing or anything that really stands out about it, like one of the heist films we're going to talk about later. But what I did like, and what's kind of saved the movie for me, is the chemistry between the three main actors, Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman, and Alan Arkin. I think the three of them just working off each other really pulled this film. It was also nice to see Anne Margaret again. And I didn't realize until later that this film was directed by Zach Braff, which I've never liked anything he's ever directed. And I really liked this film. It was enjoyable. Again, nothing really stood out, nothing really, awe-inspiring. But, a nice, quiet film, and sometimes that's all you're looking for. Number 7. The Man Who Invented Christmas. So making Christmas movies is really hard, and I said this in my review of this film. It seems like they're either so sappy that, they just make you motion sick, or they're so negative it just turns you off to the whole idea of the holidays. This one, I think, found the balance. It was, it had that, cynical nature just enough that you didn't feel like you were being inundated with sugar, but it had the heart to it that makes you feel good about the holidays. It's a good holiday movie, and enjoyable performances, and an interesting take on the concept for a concept that's been done about 1 billion times. It was a neat way to kind of come at it from another angle. Number 6, Power Rangers. So this one's going to be controversial because I know this one has already made a lot of people's worst of lists, and I can't say I disagree with why in a lot of cases. I've already spent a lot of time talking about this film. I did 2 videos on it. And, but I'm going to restate. I think that this one had some good elements. I loved the new cast. I loved their connection. I loved the issues they gave them. I know a lot of criticism was about, they're just, play by the numbers, issues. It's like, well, what kind of issues did you want them to have? I mean, people kind of have the same issues, and for a Power Ranger thing, for them to have issues at all outside of, oh no, I got a B on a math test, is kind of freaking revolutionary. So I felt like there was a lot of good to be taken from this. That being said, yeah, everything Power Rangery about Power Rangers really sucked. But it's a film, and I said this before, I'm disappointed there's not going to be a sequel. We got 5 of those god-awful Transformers films. We've done 2 of those abominable Ninja Turtle movies. This one, it actually felt like there was potential there to be mined for a sequel, and I don't think it's going to get one. So a little disappointed about that, but there's potential there. Number 5. The War for the Planet of the Apes. Ooh, this is another one that was tough because I wanted so bad to put this in the top list because I really adore this film franchise, and I adore this reboot series, and it's the series that proves me wrong because I'm the one who's always all up in arms against reboots and reimaginings. I think you should just leave them alone. But this series proved me wrong, like completely. So I wanted this one to kind of be that great topper that its predecessors were, and it was still good. A lot of things in it worked really well. Everything about the first 2 that worked still works in this one. The thing is, I think this one stepped off the edge just a little bit. The other ones tried to be ambiguous with their good guy, bad guy thing. No, this one is, who the bad guy is. The other ones, I don't know. I said it in my review, but I felt like there's actually should have been a 4th movie in between, Rise, or I'm sorry, Dawn and this one, because the War for the Planet of the Apes, there really wasn't a war in this, or the apes weren't fighting a war. This was more like a prisoner of war story, and I felt like this movie would have been great if there had been a 3rd movie in between where we actually see the apes at war. And I think that's another thing. As much as I love these movies for the intellectual aspect they take, and they're not just, big set pieces, this one didn't have the big signature image that the other two had. You know, the gorilla fighting the helicopter, or Koba dual-wielding machine guns on top of a horse. You know, it didn't have that image that kind of cemented the whole thing. Doesn't make it a bad movie. I also have to say, in the praise category, again, another theme that's going to come up is this was the year for young breakout actresses, you know, in some pretty tough roles. You know, and the young lady who plays Nova in this one did amazing work, especially considering that, one, she doesn't talk, so she's got to communicate a lot of stuff facially and with physical, with her body language and whatnot, which isn't easy to do. And the other, she's acting off of people in skin-tight suits with dots all over their faces. I mean, that can't be easy. And she does an amazing job, so I really praise her for that. So the film is still good. It's just not quite as good as the others. Number 4. Murder on the Orient Express. So this was just a fun film. I really dug it. And I know they've greenlit the sequel, and I've also heard rumor that they're actually, you know, they want Kenneth Branagh to, like, mastermind a whole Agatha Christie cinematic universe with, you know, Poirot and Miss Marple and all. And you know what? If they all kind of follow the same pattern as this one, I'd be down with that. I enjoyed it, and I think it's a great way to introduce a new audience to Agatha Christie. And yeah, this was just a good time had at the movies. I think it's a bit over directed, you know. I think, you know, Kenneth Branagh got a little carried away with, you know, some of the camera tricks, you know, the camera, you know, shooting from the bird's eye view, and, you know, the people arranged like The Last Supper. I think that's a little much, and that did take me out of it. But for the most part, I enjoyed the performances. I enjoyed the setup, and yeah, I mean, what else is there to say? This was good, and I'm looking forward to future films in this vein. Number 3. Thor Ragnarok and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So I feel like the Marvel films have settled into a nice, comfortable little niche. I think they know what they are, and they know what they need to do, and they check all the boxes and create some enjoyable films. Both these movies are really entertaining. They have a lot of fun with the spectacle. They do some fun stuff with the characters. So there's just a lot of good. There's just 2 good movies. I just think that the Marvel films in general, for the most part, have reached that point where they're not kind of the spectacular events they were when they first came out. And that's fine. You know, certain ones like, you know, Civil War or Infinity War, I'm pretty sure Black Panther kind of has that feel to it, because those haven't been done. You know, but the general sequel ones are kind of, you know what to expect, you know what's going on. So I feel like both of these are just kind of there. Now, I know other people feel very differently. Lindsay Ellis, if you watch her stuff, does a really, really brilliant video essay on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and its themes and its elements, and it's really good. So if you've never watched her stuff, go watch that. It's a really excellent analysis. But for me, I don't know, I enjoyed both movies. I watched both movies repeatedly, but, you know, if you're asking me, did they leave a huge impression on me after I left the theater? Not really. So, you know, but I think Marvel is in a position now where it's enough of a cultural milestone, it's enough of it's enough of an establishment that it's okay for one of their films it's okay for their films just to be okay in most cases. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute. Number 2. Wonder Woman. Yes, I know. I am a sexist. I'm a male chauvinist pig. I want all women barefoot and pregnant and unable to vote. I want to go back to the 50s. These are all things I have either heard people say about other folks, or I have had said directly to me, because I dared say that Wonder Woman was not the greatest movie ever made by humankind. And let me stress this, folks, because I think this message gets lost in there somewhere. With the internet, it feels like you either are on board with something or you're not, and the middle ground is, it has never been heard of. And that's with all things, but the whole point of this list is the middle ground. So let me paraphrase my review. If you saw this movie and it spoke to you, if you saw any movie on these lists and it spoke to you, and it is your new favorite thing and it gives you a feeling of empowerment, then I get it. Good on you. I'm glad there's a film that you connect with. And I understand with this film more than a lot of others that I've seen that people have liked why. It's a very well-made film. I think it has a protagonist we haven't seen that we've desperately needed for a long time. I think the scene where she cuts across no man's land is damn near transcendent. I think it's one of the best comic book movie moments ever, So if you're anybody, but especially if you're a young woman or a little girl who saw this movie and it got to you, then good. Well done. More power to you. That being said, in my male chauvinistic opinion, as a movie, objectively looking at it as a movie, it just didn't hit home for me. Now, again, it's better than any of the DC Cinematic Universe movies we've gotten so far. Admittingly, that is a very, very low bar to hurdle. But still, it definitely shot upwards from there and gave them a new high watermark that they have yet to come anywhere close to hitting. But if I'm looking at it objectively, the story is weak. The villains are boring and really poorly cast. And the acting on all fronts is surprisingly wooden and without any form of chemistry, especially between Gal Gadot and, who I'm always mispronouncing her name, and I apologize, and Chris Pine, who feel like they're in two different movies. Watching them act together, it feels like, those scenes from like the two Parent Trap movies where they'd film Hayley Mills doing one sister, and then they have to change her hair and costume to come over here and film the dialogue for the other, and they're never actually talking to each other. That's what the chemistry between those two actors is like. So I'm sorry, I can't get behind it. I can't go, it's the greatest thing ever. But again, if you did, good. And again, that goes for any movie anybody reviews. If you liked any of the movies that are on this list or on the worst list or whatever, it's a free country. Like what you want to like, But, I think maybe we could all rein it back a little bit when people disagree with us. Maybe ask why. Maybe, garner discussion a little bit. Maybe respect people's rights to have their own opinions. Maybe you don't have to fire back at everybody just because they dared say something like, meh. Maybe we could all tone it down just a wee bit. Just an idea? No? Okay. And the number one meh movie of 2017 is Spiderman Homecoming. Okay, so this is another one that's kind of hard because I was really excited about this. And I can't say I don't like the movie. I can't say the movie isn't good or that it isn't a vast improvement over the Amazing Spider-Man films. It's a wonderful return to form of Spider-Man and, his cast and his personality and all of that. I think Tom Holland is a worthy successor to Tobey Maguire. I love the new cast that the multicultural cast they have around him. Michael Keaton is amazing as the Vulture, and I like the reinterpretation of a lot of Spider-Man's tech-based villains. So I think there's a lot of good here, and I think a lot of things went really well. Again, I'm going to paraphrase my review, but I kind of feel with this film the same way I feel whenever I watch Star Trek Insurrection. I think both of them are good movies with a lot of good in them, but every time I watch them, I'm kind of overwhelmed with this feeling that there is a missed opportunity to make these films better. Now, a little while ago, I talked about how, it's okay that Marvel just kind of does, okay films like Thor and Guardians of the Galaxy. But for your first Spider-Man movie, I don't think it's okay. Spider-Man is the franchise. He is the face of Marvel Comics. He is their most important character. And when you consider how much it took for them to get him back and to get him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think just delivering an okay film doesn't quite cut it. And what gets me about it, and what frustrates me about it, is that the fix was so small and so simple. They just had to do one tiny little thing, and this film would have been amazing. The core driving factor of Spider-Man's character is guilt. Is his desire to do right by Uncle Ben, who he feels he failed, not just in stopping the burglar, but in life. He feels like he threw his lessons back at him, and he wants to be a better man. Movie Bob had a great quote about Spider-Man, and it's that Spider-Man is exactly a good enough person to beat himself up for not being a better one. And this movie would have been on my best list if we would have seen that the motivation behind Peter's desire to join the Avengers was not just, I don't want to be treated like a kid anymore. I'm ready for the big time. I'm looking for the big stuff. If it had been because being an Avenger would mean he was one of the best heroes, which means he was doing right by Uncle Ben. And all you needed, I'm on board with them not doing another origin story. I was fine with that. You didn't even need a flashback. All you needed is that at one of those critical moments when Peter's debating what is he going to do, that he looks over at his billboard and he sees a picture of him and Uncle Ben. Or when he's trapped under the rubble in the warehouse, instead of Tony Stark's voice coming back to him, you hear Uncle Ben going, "With great power comes great responsibility." That's all you needed, and we would have gotten it. That's why he was doing what he was doing. That's why he was fighting so hard. That was the driving force. And without that, it's not Spider-Man. And again, it's weird because it's the character that does it. If this had been a movie about one of the New Warriors, let's say this was a movie about Speedball, or this was a movie about Squirrel Girl, or one of these lesser known, or the new Nova. I can't remember what the kid's name is. But if this was any of the young teenage superheroes and their movie was exactly this, it'd be awesome. You'd be like, yes, okay, down with it, and that's the best movie they could have hoped for. But Spider-Man is a different creature. And while this movie did so much right, and it was enjoyable, and funny, and energetic, and, did great things with all the characters, including the villains, which is often a problem with Marvel films, that people complain about the villains aren't interesting enough. I think the villains here were. I feel losing that driving force, losing that, that thing that makes Spider-Man who he is, it didn't make it feel like a full-on Spider-Man movie, or at least not the Spider-Man movie I think they needed for the first Spider-Man movie under the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think this one could have been on par with the first Captain America or Iron Man or anything like that, but instead it's just kind of meh. So, there they are, my top 10 meh films of 2017. So, we've done the worst, We've done the rest. Next time, let's talk about the best. Next time, we're going to talk about the top 10 best films of 2017. So, until then, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.